Welcome. Welcome, Facebook Live. We're really happy to be here today. I am Diane Wong. This is Let's Talk About Race, our special series that we're creating to meet the times, to meet the moment. So I'm Diane Wong, and
I'm Pharaoh Saunders, always happy to be here.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Charles Minton. Pleasure to be before you all today.
okay, do you hear? Okay, so, okay. Okay, so here we are. And we were here last week, 7 days ago. Seems like a long time ago because we're in the midst of a great change right now. So we're going to talk a little bit about exactly how this great change is impacting all of our lives and what it means, what we think it means, what it means to the Racial Justice Collaborative. We're all members of the Racial Justice Collaborative. And last week, if you recall, last week we talked about we talked about we were started off talking about the police, and then we said, okay, but the police don't exist in a vacuum. So trying to come up with solutions for police community relations when the police are just in the center and all around is this civic engagement or not. And so this is what we want to pick back up on, talking about where are we? Um, so where are we? Charles, can you where do you think we are right now? Then I'll ask Pharaoh to talk about where he thinks we are. Where do you think we are?
So literally as we're speaking, we literally have protesters, I guess, who've breached our Capitol Hill as we speak, and I believe the vice president has been whisked away. So where we are right now, as you mentioned, we're exercising civic unrest overall in terms of, well, a certain populace of folks are sort of um, uh, doing what they believe is their duty as Americans in terms of recognizing a slight or a huge issue in terms of our country. And I guess just to sort of switch hats in terms of providing the scope in terms of the African American community, where is our civic unrest? You know, where are we? This series delves into a lot of issues which are prevalent within the African American community specifically, and of course, I'm kind of with solutions for dealing with the issues. But unfortunately, I feel like as a diaspora, in terms of representing a person of color, I don't sort of feel the level of unrest within our community. A lot of folks, I feel like, are just resting on our laurels. And it goes back to our conversation last week, just in terms of just the lack of connection with a lot of folks within the community, just in terms of voting, in terms of just doing their duty as an American citizen with regards to having a voice and making their voice heard, in terms of hoping to erect change within our society. So again, to go back to our question, where are we? I don't see us. I think right now we're not making our voices heard in some respects. I think we are in terms of what happened in election night. It looks like we gained one, if not both seats in the Senate in Georgia. So we showed our power with voting, but now it's time to take it to the next step. Next step meaning we do have a voice in terms of where we envision the country going, because I don't believe we would have gotten those votes in Georgia unless specifically African Americans came out to vote. And looking at the numbers, we came out in droves to vote in one, if not both, of the candidates for Senate. So just reflecting on us as a community, I don't think now it's a matter of depending on, as we also mentioned last week, different elected officials to sort of do the job for us. It's up to us to sort of frame the issues in which we are confronted with in our society and come up with viable solutions for eradicating these specific issues. So in other words, we're not looking for a savior to help us. We're going to begin helping ourselves. And there's many different ways in terms of the avenue in which we could go about doing that. But to me, that's at the heart of beginning to gain our voice in terms of coming up with viable solutions which continue to plague our community and society.
Thank you, Charles. And Pharaoh, where do you think we are and why?
I agree with a lot of that. I think that a main difference in opinion comes from, I don't think that we have no, outrage or presence or things like that. I certainly think we do, but I think that there's a difference in where it's directed, and that's really important as to what we're witnessing right now. Because these people, I don't even want to call them, I mean, they are protesters. Like, there's, at least so far, and this is an ongoing story and could very easily change the drop of a hat. There hasn't been any like lethality or anything like that on the part of the protesters or even the police as of yet. But they are, aiming their frustration and their outrage at the government, and that's, because their ringleader, who is the literal head of the federal government, has been telling them that the government deep state or whatever conspiracy theory has been undermining them and cheating them out of democracy and stuff like that. And it's really interesting to see him backpedal now with what they're actually doing, because just today, as this stuff has been happening, he tweeted like, "Oh, don't take your frustrations out on the police, they're not against you." It's like kind of too late for that. Like it's like he just is incapable of thinking what all of his rhetoric would have led up to, which is clearly this. Like, at this, anyone should have known this was going to happen.
Well, the interesting thing to me is that because he's been winding this, it's like turning the dial, winding it up, and I'm almost 100% positive that he never saw his supporters, although he wanted all these supporters to come, and he never hesitates in the past to tell them to bring their guns and rifles and whatever. And so, they're the ones that are armed and, trying to take captives and do all of that. So he didn't somehow, like Pharaoh just said, he didn't see that all of them converging on the Capitol with malice in heart. And then you've got all of these police and maybe the troops, who knows, that are also there. All of these are supposed to be Trump supporters, right? The police, Trump supporters, the supporters are Trump supporters. And now here they're the ones that are going to at least suffer at least a little bit. And it will be interesting to see how he tamps this down now that he's brought all this up. So, but let's go into the bigger issue. This is certainly, it's at the very least entertaining.
Right.
From when you're just watching it from a distance. But the bigger question, even before that, I just want to say, I think it's remarkable and marvelous what Black voters coming out in droves, because when I've looked at the South for years, South Carolina for like years and years and years, there are more Black people in these areas than white people. And so there's always been the potential for Black voters to vote. And now you see that the whole history the whole history of voting, and this is what it's always been about: keeping disenfranchising Black people, keeping gerrymandering, doing everything that they could do to keep the Black people from voting. And now we see why. We always knew why, but here now, people, you can vote people in that can do the things that are good for you, the things that are important for your family. And so here we are. And so it's an actually, it's a marvelous thing to watch. This is all marvelous to watch. All the dynamics of this is about voting. It's all about voting. Trump's people.
But to that, right.
It's fascinating. It's really interesting to see the, I think, death blow to the Republican Party, because I don't think he can survive this, because he's completely co-opted it. And like, him becoming the nominee back in 2016 and becoming president, they probably thought they'd just, ride it out, take the advantage of it while they could until they no longer could. But I don't think that they're going to be able to like move on past this. I think it is very potentially could just be a permanent split and rift in the party, which from partisan perspectives means it will be half as effective, both of them, and will be near irrelevant.
Well, you know what I did, and then Charles, but let me just throw in this one thing. I was reading today just to see who, because they broke down the vote. I mean, they broke it down by age and by gender and by race and by education. And if you look at it, and also by Republican and Democrat, who voted for who. But if you look at it, 75 or so % of white people voted for the white people. So here there's that too. There's this racial. This is all about race. It's always been about race, and that's been the problem in this country for the last 400 years or 300, however old it is. It's always been about race, and now it's all out in the open. So here we're going to talk in a minute. We're going to scoot on into where do we go from here. So before we do that, Charles, so what do you think? What's going on?
Yep. Just to maybe unpack what you and Pharaoh said, just even, go even deeper. I think it's important just to keep in mind that Trump is a symptom of a larger issue, which is currently, plagued America since its creation, just in terms of what it has represented in terms of demeaning and pretty much hoping to destroy the Black voice within American society, and pretty much not allowing us to have a voice up to certain various junctures, recent various laws which has been put into place in terms of hoping to provide us with a voice. But at the onset of the creation of this nation, we were 3/5 of a person. We simply did not have a voice at all in terms of the construction of this country. So I want, and I need Black folks, and specifically because we came out in droves yesterday, and of course within the election, just to keep in mind that we have an even bigger fight now, because in essence we got what we wanted in a lot of respects. But I do think a lot of the folks ran under the platform of getting Trump out of here, which is fine. Okay, he's gone. Now what do we do? So it's really important that we make sure that we are explicit and deliberate in terms of outlining our needs and making sure that we are doing our due diligence within the community to make sure that they're met, and then holding the folks accountable who we put into office to make sure they are doing certain things within their perspective to ensure that our needs are being met. And if not, then we get them, to say it no other way, to get them the hell out of there when we have to vote them out or vote them in within a matter of years. So I just want Black folks in particular to sort of just temper our enthusiasm in a lot of ways and sort of direct it in terms of, okay, so the now what, you know?
Yeah,
So we got what we wanted, you know. So now what do we do moving forward? I think is key.
yeah, exactly. Directing that, you know, push that Black voters were the most instrumental part of in the state of Georgia, easily. And
Yeah.
it's just math on that.
Right.
The driving force behind the Democratic victories in Georgia, victory, I guess the other two haven't been decided yet, but they look positive. But that's indisputable, and that's massive, and it speaks to the importance of civic engagement with Black people moving forward. And you're right that it needs to be directed towards fostering a continuous and ongoing cycle of civic engagement in the Black community. And I think that there's a real opportunity for that, and that's a really good thing. This could be the start of a really important benchmark.
Because
In
honestly,
regards,
yeah. No, I was just going to say, because to me, just in terms of fostering energy, and I guess we're going to get into Diane shortly, in terms of within the Black community, that sort of comes in a lot of ways with anger, and then channeling that anger in the right direction. And I think, for better or for worse, Trump helped us to, as a people and pretty much as a nation, to sort of develop an anger for the way things are. So now we have that anger, correct? So we have that anger, we have that energy. So now it's really important to just, you know, recognize what that energy is, and as you mentioned, sort of channel it in the ways that sort of help our community. So in other words, we need to be as angry with the way that police treat us within our communities. We need to be as angry with the way that education is currently funded within inner cities. We need to be as angry with the way that we sort of don't provide a voice in terms of hoping to correct changes within the community, in terms of drugs being funneled within our communities, all different aspects, in terms of the way in which we're continuing to just thrown in jail, and we just have, you know, person after person continuing to be shot down without any sort of comeuppance for the folks who are shooting down unarmed Black folks in our communities. So we just need to channel this energy, this hatred that we have for Trump, to sort of help us moving forward.
Yeah, and it's really important to note that this is proof of the ability to do that and to achieve that, because I feel like it's often overlooked what the United States is, but it's United States, and states are independent republics that are joined under federal government. But you see right here with the state of Georgia, the massive power that the Black population has to push towards civic goals. And so with that, that's just a microcosm of what can be done. Is like, you should be able to, through proper community engagement and through, the proper civic motivation, achieve any ends that are, most productive towards assisting the community.
There are a couple of things I want to add to this discussion. The things that you mentioned, Charles, those are important things. The things that we don't want to happen. We want to stop violence against Black people. We also want the other things. COVID-19 has made certain other things clear, like healthcare. That healthcare is largely, there just whole swaths of people in the community do not have healthcare or don't have decent healthcare. And then there's another thing, which is the wealth gap. So that we're going to have to take a big look. I don't believe that there's anything right now that we're doing in terms of work that is sustainable. I think that technology pretty much is going to take 75% of all the quote unquote work and take care of that. And so we're not going to need labor. We don't need uneducated labor to do the work that people have done in the past. So that means we have to support people in some other ways. So there's another big, and that's a big push, because one of the things that makes this animosity and there is a lot of all with totally animosity towards Black people so alive, is this myth that Black people are lazy and looking for something for nothing. So but when we're, we have to find other ways of providing support, not just for Black people, but for a whole lot of other people. So we have those other kinds of things that we have to do as well.
Yeah, that's a conversation I was having very recently with friends, was the oncoming and looming threat of innovation. And generally, with the speed in which that is coming, it and this both the speed in which that is coming, which is the future of automation, and also the speed in which political ends are reached in this country, we will not be able to keep up at all with appropriate legislation for how to handle that sort of development technologically. We will be vastly outpaced. I think that there are solutions. I think that government regulation on the development of automation and the replacement of human labor with automation is something that will have to happen, and is both something that should morally happen. I think the government has a moral place and obligation to weigh in on that form of development. I don't think that it should be halted or thrown out, because I think that that's both impossible and unrealistic, as well
Right.
as just too regressive. But it needs to be handled so that it can be addressed responsibly, because those forces should be, and ideally will be, used for the assistance of people, because there's lots of benefit economically, from a profit perspective, to be gained from those sorts of things, and that needs to be directed in a way that assists people. Because if that can't be directed in a way to assist people through providing jobs, through necessary labor, then it needs to be redirected in a different way. But the point is that will have to be forced, because obviously you can't rely on the forces of the free market to give out money when it doesn't need to. That's something that has to be directed purposefully.
We're going to have to look at this kind of system, the monetary system that we have. So capitalism really doesn't work.
I mean, pure capitalism doesn't work, and
pure capitalism,
we've
right?
never had pure capitalism.
Right.
No government has ever had pure capitalism. We have a mixed economy. I think that's too heavily skewed with how the labor trends are going to go, and we're going to need to rebalance it over time. I don't think that pure communism works. I don't think it ever has worked in human history. Like, these are political extremes. The only rational and truly operative economic systems that have ever worked are mixed economies, and those are the only ones that we have in the real world, besides extreme examples like North Korea, that I don't think anyone would call functioning in proper state. So we
Well,
have to find a way to rebalance it to assist people so that they can live to optimum potential. And
well,
that's what any economic system should do.
and that's what we're going to have to do, so that the system that we have now, it doesn't work. So because of COVID-19 and because of unemployment, a lot of kind of factors, we already are starting to hear kind of rumblings of ideas of sending certain people or all people or something like that $2,000 a month. Well, those are the kinds of things that are being considered in other countries in the world. So because if we take away labor, then we've got to support people, that we just have to.
And there will be the money to support people, assumedly, because if you
Yes,
can
yes.
replace these labor jobs with machines that don't need to be paid,
Right.
then that money is just transferred into profits, and therefore there should theoretically be enough money to distribute some of it back to people.
Right. We're
One
going to
thing
have
that, yeah.
And that way, as far as jobs and the workforce is concerned, there will have to be a shift towards service and other like specialist jobs. Those are the only jobs left, because those jobs won't be replaced by automation until vastly into the future. We aren't even close to being able to do that, but we are close and already on the way to replacing labor jobs with machines. So the jobs people are going to have is going to have to be almost completely focused around service and highly trained education jobs.
Right. Well, first off, going back to what you mentioned, Diane, in 2000, I think it's the height of hypocrisy just to for the government to just give folks $600 in this climate. I think it's insane. I don't know even if you can even provide an amount in terms of like what a family would need, but I think for government officials, Democrat, Republican, whoever, to think that $600 is enough in this climate where so many folks, to your point with regards to COVID, has lost their jobs. In reference to what's going on now, I think it's just in terms of like sponsoring anger, folks need to pretty much raid the Capitol building in reference to that, but again,
they're rating it in reference to something else.
Exactly. You're right.
Well,
right.
Though I think it's going to take really looking at it and creating it in a more delicate way than just across the board. Send out $2,000 to everybody, or maybe that actually will work.
I think that honestly, I think one of the appeals of UBI versus a more specific system of analyzing, functional wealth of a household before you send them this amount or that amount, is that it can't be gamed. It is just what it is. There will be no way of manipulating it to, changing your taxes around to get more money, or people complaining other people are getting more than other people. Right. It will need to be analyzed to be enough to be a significant difference to help all people. But once that is made, I don't think that it should be changed more, because that's what fosters a lot of that infighting. Those are the excuses used to foster those infighting, because it's not like those things are legitimate. Like some people with the welfare system as it currently exists needs more than others. But the fact that there is a difference is a convenient excuse for others to complain that some people take more or less or whatever like that.
Yeah,
and so
I agree.
That system is immune to that. So I think that is
yes.
a good way to balance that out, is everyone gets the same.
Yes. Yeah. Some countries, I mean, this was already coming toward us anyway.
Right.
It's just got it's exponentially faster because of COVID, and we get a chance to look at it. But this has been on the way for a long time, and now it just means that we need to do it. And I agree with Pharaoh. If we start to say, depending on your circumstances, then that's when people start to be, accusatory that some people are not worthy of receiving some kind of benefit. Just give it to everybody. And there's plenty of money. So all we have to do is stop hoarding. Just create a system that does not allow the hoarding of resources and the hoarding of benefit.
Literally, our government is printing money as we speak. And, Pharaoh, going back to what you mentioned in terms of innovation, I think at the heart of that is education, or the inequalities or the inequities which currently exist within our education system. So in terms of where folks can sort of like begin to channel our energy in the right direction, could be what I envision, a sort of reimagining what education looks like. Specifically within the African American community, because at this point we've been given a huge, I don't know the way to put it, but I guess we've been sort of a wicked stepsister, sort of negative aspect, just in terms of the way we've been treated, in terms of just the inequalities in terms of funding within our communities, specifically within certain inner cities. Is based on taxing, like with regards to housing taxing. So perhaps within certain inner cities, particularly if they live in project areas, they don't specifically pay like the same amount of housing tax as other areas. So There's just built-in inequalities that exist within our education system overall, that sort of does not lead into STEM programs. That does not lead into, I guess, fortified and properly educated folks to teach specifically students within our inner cities, to sort of put them on a path towards becoming members of this global world that we live in. We sort of, been placed behind the eight ball, and I think within education aspects, there's an easy way, I think, in terms of funneling our energy towards hoping to rectify that issue.
Yeah, it's really interesting to think about the necessity of those shifts and how that's going to be important. Those things already are important, but how it's going to be even more important as the economy changes so massively due to automation. Like the only jobs left will be skilled labor, like trades, because that'll be hard to automate, because that's like requires a degree of mobility and degree of specialty that we don't have in machine learning. That's going to be for like large scale, simple sorts of labor jobs. And service jobs, so things that require more social stuff, that won't be able to be replaced. And then jobs require like high degrees of education, and
Right.
because that's going to be all that there is, and those aren't the majority of jobs numbers wise. So we're going to have a massive number of people that will have to be forced out of their lifestyles, and it's happening too fast for it to be like wait to be waited upon until a next generation that will be able to be grown with that concept in mind of this entirely new economy that they're going to be raised in. It's too fast for that. So current people are going to be forced out of whatever they're doing and made to live in this world.
That's largely the problem with the discontent that we see, not amongst the Black people who have been kept out of things for a long time, but amongst the white people, so that they've been pushed out of their jobs. I know I used to live in Oregon, and there everybody. I was at the tail end of the logging industry, and so there you had that kind of logging, and people made they made a living wage cutting down the trees. But then the trees, like there's only 5% of old growth still left in Oregon. So pretty soon it just became clear that they could not continue to do that work. And then they had to start being retooled, and retooled the kind of jobs that they were getting from that. The training that they had to get was not paying anywhere near what they were paid when they were loggers. And so when you look at the people up in the hills in all these places, and the ones that are practicing firearms, this is who they are. These are the people that used to live and do this kind of build the railroad, except for some of them. And now they're not happy, and they feel like,
and they shouldn't be happy. That's a legitimate reason to be outraged, but it's aimed in a way that doesn't make any sense. I can see it. I can see it, but it's aimed in a way that isn't in their best interest for the long term.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, there's one other thing I wanted to bring up about the election yesterday, the Georgia election. When I was reading, and I saw that 75% or so of white people were voting for the Republicans. Of course, 90% of Black males voted for the Democrats, and 94% of Black females. But also the Latinos in large numbers, 75% of Latinos were also voting Democrat, and 65 or so percent of Asians. So so here we've got coalitions.
Right.
To me, that's a big thing that we want to look for and try to come up with ways of coalescing, bringing our issues together. So it's not just Black issues, not leaving out Black issues, but not only Black issues, not only Black people, but also Latinos and Asians. So it's more of a
Well, it
people
doesn't
of
only
color.
affect Black people. It affects
Yes.
all people. It's just
Right.
basically coming down to who can recognize what's in their best interest or not.
Right.
Or, if it actually is in their best interest. If you're an extremely wealthy, white person that yourself is your primary concern, then you can make the argument that voting Republican is in your best interest. But if not, then it isn't. And so it comes down to if you can see that for what it is or not.
Right.
And that's
Right.
that is very skewed. People see
And some of those qualifiers aren't even necessary. Like you see, I saw there's all kinds of celebrities. So there's one of those, the worst one, or is 50 Cent saying, I see it, Trump hates Republicans, but these taxes that Joe Biden's implementing,
Right.
nope, don't want it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
that's so
exactly.
selfish. I mean, it's
Right.
true that it's
Mhm.
in his, as far as his wealth is concerned, it's in his best interest tax wise.
Right.
And then you can make the argument, okay, that is in my best interest. But for all of these, especially like poor rural white people, that's not in their best interest. It's just
Right.
not. That is the source of what a lot of their hardship is coming from, and their hardship is real. Like whenever I talk to someone about this, they're like, oh, you're not get what they're going through. Like, I mean, I don't live through it, but I can understand it, and I agree that it's legitimate. But they're not putting their frustration, which is rightful, towards its appropriate ends to actually fix their problems.
Right.
And that's what's so difficult about it, is they are in pain, and that matters, but they aren't using that anger coming from that pain for the proper ends to actually fix their problems.
well, that's because they've believed for so long that the problem was Black people.
Yeah, they believe it's a lot of things. That's
Yeah.
one of it. Blaming minorities for various capacities depends on which minority group you're talking about, why it's their fault. But yeah, there's always a reason it's their fault. It's anti-intellectualism, it's anti, coastal elitism. It's a lot of things. It's a lot of antis. The point is that it's not actually being aimed in ways that will help them for the most part.
No,
Right.
no, no. And they would rather not have any food on the table and not have any health care than to see any Black person get that.
And I think,
Sometimes
right.
that's it. Sometimes it's not that. Sometimes it's all, less, stereotypical than that. But the point is, regardless of if the truth is being obfuscated or not, it's usually not aimed in the right direction. And that's why sometimes it takes really specific talking points to talk to them. Like when Andrew Yang was still running for president, he's still doing a lot of stuff. Like especially he was really involved with the organization of voting in Georgia, so that was important. But when he was running for president, one of his main talking points was about what we were just talking about. There's the automation aspects, and that's something not a lot of politicians, Democrat or not, were talking about. And he was talking about it, and that had a lot of popularity with those groups because that's something that they actively care about.
Right.
And so sometimes it's difficult to reach people, and it is the politician's job to reach people. Obviously, you should be an informed voter, but it should the majority, I would say, weighs on the politician to reach out to the demographics they're trying to court and address those concerns. And that's a really big one with them. And sometimes it's hard to see from the voter's perspective exactly how a lot of nebulous things will go in their direction, even if it will. But you need those specific talking points to help get them in that direction. And that's the sort of thing that works with that group, apparently. And I understand why it does. It makes perfect sense.
Right.
What about, let's talk about civic engagement. That's actually the title of this talk today. So what is it that has generated the interest in Black people and other people, but especially Black people who have not historically come out in huge numbers in Georgia? And let's just look at Georgia. So what is it that is bringing Black voters out now? What is it that has interest in civic engagement?
Well, I think specifically Black folks in Georgia, I think they recognize that they do have a voice in terms of if we vote out, if we come out in droves and we vote for the person or the persons that we want in office, that person can end up winning. In a lot of ways, throughout the years, I vote, particularly within the Black community, we felt disenfranchised in terms of, okay, I vote for this person. It doesn't matter. This person doesn't have a chance of getting elected, or why should I even, sort of invest my time in politics because it's not going to trickle down into, me just, going out every day and try to make a living for my family. But I do think folks are sort of gaining that perspective that, wow, my voice can be heard. The person who I'm voting for does in fact invest or have some of my views in terms of hoping to make a difference. So I do feel like, to your point, Diane, that a lot of folks, in particular young people, came out in droves and voted for those two specific senators, those Democratic senators in Georgia. And I think moving forward, now hopefully we can sort of like sponsor this sort of engagement to affecting all aspects of not only within the Black community, but just all aspects of various communities within our society. But it helps that folks believe that they have a voice and their voice can be heard through the polls, through actually voting. So I think that actually helps tremendously. Yep.
Yeah, 100%. It also helps that Donald Trump is a historically hated president. So
there you go.
That's good motivation. So
yep, absolutely.
So that'll do it.
So now what has to happen? What has to be gained? I mean, what do people have to see in order to, this is 2000,
people have to see victories.
2021. So like what, for example?
Like these races being won. And that's what people needed to see, and that's what people are seeing so far. I mean, these aren't won yet, but they're looking good.
Yeah,
and
but
those things generally don't tend to change too much in the opposite direction.
I just think that, so what? So they voted in 2 Democrats. So
you mean like in terms of like
now
laws being passed and changed?
Things, yeah. Mm-hmm. Because you see, we've had a time in the past, actually, the last time that President Obama, the first time he ran, and they had the Senate and the House
for 2 years.
For 2 years, that's
Correct.
That's all you can ever count on. So
that's more than you can count on. So but back then there was less of this, culture of massive divisionism. It still obviously was a culture of divisionism, but it's only gotten worse, and significantly so. And so he had the trifecta for 2 years, but there also wasn't this culture of needing to do everything you can do in a small amount of time while it's guaranteed as possible. There was still this energy of, well, we should still play fair. Whatever fair means. It's it's following the law, it's following the Constitution. It was like, well, we should still be bipartisan in these respects.
So what do you think? So now what about that?
That's gone.
What are we? Okay.
They killed that. The Republican Party over the last 4 years murdered that.
Okay, but see, this is what we're going to watch. Because if we see, let's get the Republicans and get them on board and waste the first 6 months doing that, I think people are going to lose interest fast in voting.
I agree. They're going to need to take advantage if this trifecta can be gained through taking the Senate with these 2 votes and then vice president tiebreaker. It has to be used. It needs to be implemented with impunity to pass laws. And if there isn't, I completely agree with you. People will lose interest and think that it didn't matter. And honestly, in some ways, it won't have mattered if it's not used. Because these were fights. These were incredibly drawn out, skin of your teeth victory fights. And if those victories were for nothing, and that they don't actually use the power that these victories gained, then they were for nothing.
Right. Yeah.
I think that's
there's a lot of work. There's a lot of work to push back on the things that Trump did. There's a lot of that. That takes you a whole 2 years just doing that. but
I think
also by
yep.
creating something
A lot of what he
for
did
the
was just through
people.
executive order, so that can
Well,
be done
yeah.
just on the part of Joe
Yeah.
Biden. It
Well,
doesn't
then,
need to be
but
done
then,
through
but then
Congress or the Senate.
Joe Biden has to be willing to use that executive.
He does, but that's on him. That's not time dependent
No,
like
but if he
the
doesn't,
potential Senate or Congress is.
no, but still, see, if we don't see Joe Biden, if he doesn't do something for the people a lot, then getting people to come back out and vote again after we came out and voted for you and you did nothing because you wanted to mollycoddle or some other word the Republicans.
Yep.
You want to go back to
You'll never get this. You won't get the same support again.
But I think that's where we the issues that we sort of had when Obama was in office. We sort of expected Obama to be our savior. So I don't want to put any of our hopes and dreams on Biden of all people to sort of like lead the cause for Black folks and for folks of color. I don't think that's going to happen.
But a lot of these things aren't about crusading for Black people. That's irrelevant. Like a lot of the stuff that Trump has done isn't specifically about punishing Black people. It's not about being our savior. It's about repealing universally, on the left, and not even on the far left, just on the left. If you're on the left even a little bit, or even a centrist left, Democrat like him, you're still universally against it. It's just going to be about repealing those and not waiting around to repeal those.
Yeah, but I think, and maybe this is where Charles is going. I bet he's going. I think it's also on us still. We can't give up one, we don't give up one drop. We have to come together and decide, what do we want? And then we have to go forward and demand. We have to go forward because that's what Joe Biden can respond to, the demands of the people. And if the people aren't demanding anything, then we're just relying on him to figure it out. It's not going to work.
Some of it isn't even demands of the people, because Trump did so many things that weren't, I don't know, the antithesis of the demands of the people. A lot of it is irrelevant to what people wanted. It was just repealing, important, especially international things, like pulling out of the Paris Accords. No one asked for that. But people also, on the civic level, on the average American citizen, I don't think that's the majority of people's, occupying their space of what they're thinking about. It's important, though. Yeah. And that's something that you just need to reverse instantly, first day. And you can't wait around to do it, because there's no point in waiting around to do it. You have the authority to do it immediately. And the only reason not to would be to worry about the feelings of Trump or his supporters, and you can't do that. And that's the sort of thing that you just need to do immediately. It's not about waiting for the people to tell you what you want, because people aren't going to tell him to do that. The people didn't tell Trump to do that. They didn't explicitly tell him not to do it. It's not always about that. Sometimes a lot of these things are just executive level things like that. The Iran deal, that's not about what the people want. It's irrelevant, but are irrelevant to the demands of the people, but it's still important to do. And those are the sorts of things I'm talking about.
Yeah, okay, I agree. So let's wrap this up so that we don't go over the time and make it hard for the TV and the radio. So Charles, where are we now? What do you think? Where do you think we need to go now? What do you think we need to do now? What do you want to see now?
The saying, actions speak louder than words. And for better or for worse, what we're all witnessing on Capitol Hill is powerful. Whether you agree or disagree with their methods or their message, it is a powerful action in terms of them storming the Capitol and just making their voices heard. And I feel like within this climate, we need a lot of folks who are fearless and willing to sort of put their neck on the line in terms of really affecting change within their community. And then, of course, within their community, trickling down to the society at large. But to do that, you have to make bold moves. And I think sort of one of the things that we're asking for within the Racial Justice Collaborative now, we're going to start making bold moves in terms of hoping to galvanize folks within the community to really affect change. This can come through protest. This can come through professional development in terms of what you mentioned, Pharaoh, with regards to helping folks how to learn innovative structures and education in terms of not being left behind within our current global society. So this calls for bold moves for every individual, not just the individuals who are government officials, but all of us, really doing our part in terms of wanting to affect change. And that could be whatever respect and whatever aspect you see fit, but allowing an individual to speak for you can no longer be the case for any of us. So I
I
just
love
think moving
that. I love
forward,
that.
just being bold
So
is what I'm calling for.
So I hear two things, and I think we can do all of them in the first 2 years.
Right.
As Pharaoh said, because it's not like Joe Biden is, doesn't have to run around to all these different places and do these things himself.
Right.
He's bringing a whole group of people, and
Right.
so we can do the Paris peace accords, we can do the Iran deal, we can do a lot of different things on the international scene, and we can do things. He needs to do something for the people and
Right.
the people who voted for him. Now, yes, I understand that he's the president for all the people, but I see them fall into that every time. That's a trap. Every time you people vote for you, and then you say, well, it'd be nice, but I got to be president for all the people. No, I want to see you do something for the one that brought you to the dance. So both, and for all the people too. But first, do something for the Black people, the Latinos, the Asians, the ones that voted, the Senate. I mean, this Senate thing is big. So
Right.
let's do that, and at the same time, get all your people out there to do the Paris peace accords and all
You
the
can't be
international
scared
stuff.
to have a partisan tilt. You can't be
No,
scared to have a
yes,
massive partisan tilt
massive.
at
That's
this
good,
stage in
Pharaoh.
the game. That's the concern, because that's what you're talking about. Is like you be
Yes,
president of all the
Right.
people. It's like all the people did not vote for you.
yeah.
Right.
Like they are
Right.
not who put you in power, and you need to tend to that base first and foremost, or they
Yes.
will not reelect you.
Right.
Yes, yes, there it is. Okay, that's what we want to see. And all of this requires bold moves.
Correct.
So we don't want to see timid moves. We don't want to see tiptoeing around the Republicans. We see where the Republicans are. They're the ones that are trying to, keep you from getting to even be president. And look, you see what they're doing. So like, take care of the people who voted for you. Partisan tilt. Yes.
Right.
Okay.
And it could even be on a smaller scale in terms of, if you don't like the way the current structures are in place with regards to education, taking a group of folks and going down to where the districts have their meetings and pretty much make your voice heard in terms of making change within your community. Don't wait for anyone else to do it. Do it for yourself. Make your voice heard, people.
Yeah. So that's what Charles is saying, and he's right. All of us have to decide what is important to us. It took a lot to get this man in office and to get rid of Donald Trump. And it took a lot to get these senators. So I'm almost convinced that these two senators are going to somehow win after a week of like revoting and re-examining the vote.
It seems like Raphael Warnock is definitely going to win. He has a comfortable lead. It's John Oswald. It's the other one that's really close.
It's not that close. He's 16,000 votes. And the outstanding votes are in the Black neighborhoods. Those are always the last ones to get the vote because they've got the worst machines. They always have the worst machines.
And they have the most people, and that just takes longer.
And they have the most people.
Right.
But it's looking like that. So I want to see change right now on the international front and on the domestic front. And I want to see change flowing to the Black and Latino and Asian communities because they're the ones that brought you to the dance.
And Diane, we're going to be the ones that help sponsor that change.
We are going to be the ones that are going to facilitate the dialogue to help people find their voice.
There you
Every voice must be heard. Every
Right.
voice must be heard. That's what we're going to do. The Racial Justice Collaborative is going to help find the voice of the people. Okay, So Pharaoh, is there anything you would like to say to end this?
We're living in a time of great change, but also even greater opportunity for even more change. So you have to make sure that the ball keeps rolling.
Thank you.
Mm.
And Charles, say it once again loud that, be bold, do what
Be
you need to
bold,
do.
make powerful moves, people. Don't let anyone make the decisions for you. Define your course of action, what it is, and move forward boldly, swiftly.
Yes. Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. And we'll be back next week, same place, same time.
We're gonna have a lot to talk about, I believe, next week.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm certain.
Yeah.
Take care,
Okay.
everyone.
Thank you. Take
Thank
care,
you.
everybody. Thank you. Oh, okay.
All right.
Oh, that was
That
much.
was
Why is it still recording?
I'm
Oh,
not